Welcome to Rooted to Thrive, conversations to elevate our humanity. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson Ansari, Professor P for short. This is your podcast sanctuary for cultivating mindsets and skills to elevate our shared humanity. We're taking a deep dive into practical strategies to evolve as anti-racist, culturally competent, and inclusive individuals and leaders. In each episode, we're bringing you real-world examples and actionable takeaways. We're going to talk about personal growth, fostering connection, and creating positive change that dismantles systemic barriers and creates environments where all of us are valued, empowered, and activate our collective power. This is Rooted to Thrive. Welcome and welcome back to everyone joining us on Rooted to Thrive, Conversations to Elevate Our Humanity podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson Ansari, aka Professor P. Today, we have Solveiga Jaskunas. She is a Lithuania native who is an HR consultant, career coach, connector, and speaker. Her passion lies in helping immigrants thrive professionally in the United States and working with the employers as well, right, to make their workplace cultures more inclusive. So Solveiga and we met on LinkedIn and instantly connected over our passion to help groups that are historically marginalized, right, in the workplace, out in our public lives, help them thrive in the United States. So Solveiga, it is an honor to have you joining us today. And I have been inspired by you, by so many conversations that we've had. I just want other people to hear what you have to say as well. How are you doing today?
What an introduction. And yes, thank you so much. I felt inspired by every conversation I had with you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So you're doing well today?
Yes, I'm doing well. Recorded conversations are never easy for me, but I'll try to do my best.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm excited because we're talking about belonging and rebuilding self-confidence abroad, right? So to get started, why don't you share with the audience what it means to belong?
Yes, it's a good question, and it's a deep question because I had those thoughts for some times. What does it mean belonging even to myself? And first, I found it's really belonging starts within yourself. Because when you belong within yourself, and you suddenly start feeling that you belong everywhere. And belonging in a new country is a journey. It takes time, effort, courage, getting out of a comfort zone, and kindness to ourselves as well as also to others.
Yes. Tell me how this belonging, right? How does that relate to helping us elevate our humanity?
For me, elevating humanity is you cannot elevate if you don't belong in the environment. So it starts, from that belonging and from the beginning. And then secondly, it's belonging, when you belong in environment and you help others to belong in environment, then you also can truly see another person. And when you truly see another person, you can help that person much better than otherwise. Belonging requires you not only see another person of your eyes, but also of your heart. Because when you see another person of your heart, then you can hear and understand that person much better than before.
Yes.
And then a lot of time, we feel much more comfortable in being in environments where we belong, because we feel safe, we feel accepted. However, the learning happens if stepping out and outside your comfort zone and going to the rooms where you don't belong. and you suddenly saying, I'm going to belong in this room. And when you start acting differently and seeing how you can be accepted and how you can bring a different points, this is where learning happens for you and the learning happens for others.
Yes.
So, for example, probably the best example of that will be that when I came to the United States, I thought that I will never belong. And it felt sometimes uncomfortable for me to be in the room where I was the only non-native speaker because everybody else looked at me and it felt uncomfortable. And so sometimes I decided to stay silent and quiet because it felt uncomfortable, uneasy. Now, like if I'm in the room where I'm the only different person, or maybe I'm the only one whose English is not native, I know that I'm in the right room because this is where I can bring a different perspective for others.
Yeah.
Mm,
If you wouldn't mind, that just
mm,
struck a chord for me.
mm,
Do you know when you shifted or how you shifted? What helped you build your confidence?
mm. Yeah, so I recently thought about like, I'm still building that. I'm still building because even like, speaking I've done for almost a year. Now I'm invited to the podcast. I just spoke in the global HR conference that I never thought I would be speaking. And yet it's still like a learning journey for me. But I see that your courage and your comfort happens when you try yourself. It will
Mm,
not happen observing it. It happens when you step out of your comfort zone. And for me, probably I got lucky, I got lucky to work for very diverse organizations, for very diverse groups. I worked with refugees, I worked with homeless kids, I worked with high-risk youth and immigrants and people from diverse backgrounds. I never worked with people from my own country. So I always was in the rooms where I was different. And in some ways, for sometimes it felt, as I said, uncomfortable. And now I see there is a beauty of that because you can bring a different perspective. And yes, even speaking and stepping out to be a speaker, I never considered before because, as I mentioned before, it made me feel very imperfect and uncomfortable. And now I see that in some ways it is my weakness, but it's also my strength because in the world there are many other people who are not as comfortable speakers, not as perfect speakers, and I want to encourage others who to step out of their zone of comfort and tell their stories, no matter of your comfort level, because I want to hear those stories and I want to inspire others to do so.
yes, wonderful. And, I know something about your background, right? I know that you
Mhm,
had a workplace experience where someone took a chance on you,
mhm,
right, early on. And I wondered if that helped in building your comfort zone as well, like you stepping out of your comfort zone. That was evidence, right, that I stepped out of my comfort zone. I'm a non-native English speaker, and someone took a chance on you, right, in the role that you had in HR, in human resources. You have to say words out loud because we don't
yes,
know fully, right? I have to stop saying acronyms like HR, but
mhm,
in human resources, right? Can
mhm.
you talk a little bit about that?
If to talk about my first manager,
Okay. Yes,
well,
or the person
my
that
first,
hired you. Yeah.
yeah. So it when I came to United States, I had a degree in industrial psychology and I got certificates. I took every opportunity to learn, took English classes, joined the Toastmasters club. But my interviewing experience was not pleasant because my English is still not perfect, but at that time was worse. So I thought like I don't know when I can compete with somebody who's English native. And yes, I'm still very grateful to my first manager who hired me at the time that nobody else did it. And he hired me to be as a sole HR practitioner. And he not only hired me, but he also trained and mentored me in different aspects in human resources. And yes, I'm still very grateful to him. And I wish it will be more managers like that who will give opportunities for others at the time that other people don't and help them to grow. And yes, I recently talked with him about that. And actually, he was also helping me to prepare for my first speech at the Global HR Summit. But he told me that the communication was never about English for him.
Mm.
And I think that is really, I'm grateful. And I felt I don't want to disappoint them because they gave me that chance. And yes, the reason, I decided, and it opened my own perspective because I never expected that other people will reach out to me and ask me to be a voice for them.
Wow. Yeah. So people are now reaching out to you to be a voice for them. And so I've seen you call the voice or the immigrant voice, or right, you elevate the immigrant voice, which is wonderful. You're connecting with so many people across the globe already, yes? Yet you,
Including you.
yeah, yes, exactly. And we could talk about that a little bit as well too, because I feel like if we weren't if both of us did not have an open mind,
Mm-hmm.
an open heart, we would not have ever connected,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like I said, I've been inspired by so many things that you said. I've learned some things, just like a core value from Lithuania that I learned that I'm incorporating in my life now, right? Around not success yet, right? That there's no word really for failure in Lithuania. I have to incorporate that in my life. Excuse me, as someone who is a trained educator, right? Like, so a professional educator, been in education for 36 years, there is a lot of conditioning that makes us feel like there's a right and a wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just grateful that we crossed paths and that we were given the hearts and minds to be open to all kinds of people and learning from each other. Yes. So
Yes.
you said a few things about your first manager or the person that hired you. And you said that that person, one, took a chance on you, and they trained you, they mentored you, right? They were patient with you, and here you are. I think you said you did that, you were in that role for about 10 years,
No, no,
right?
no. I was in that role for 3 years, and
Oh, for,
my manager left before me, and then it was yeah, and then I left it. Yeah, so I worked for 3 years, but I stayed in touch with him for all these years.
right. But you were in human resources for 10 years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so you went on to other companies, right?
Mhm.
Look at that. Like a stepping stone to your career was made by taking a chance. And what I love that you said, this manager said communication is more important than English proficiency. I want people to hear that it's communication that was more important than English proficiency. So with that in mind,
Mhm.
what are some practical strategies that leaders can implement to prioritize belonging, prioritize their people first
Mhm.
while they're developing their self-confidence?
Mhm.
And maybe there's some practical advice for the leaders, and even maybe educators in building their own self-confidence.
Sure. So I truly believe investing in mentoring and investing in developing first yourself and investing in developing of others is truly important because mentoring is always two-way street. When you
Yes,
mentor somebody, you also learn so much yourself. And there are many mentoring programs and organizations, but I would like people thinking a little outside of the box and expanding the way they see mentoring and helping having many more mentoring conversations, not of one person, but of so many others, and also seeing how you can help people outside of a community. Because this is how you can make also a bigger difference. And I worked for one organization where I was part of a mentoring program where we mentored newly arrived immigrants, and they were not employees of our organization. But it was really a powerful experience because it was nice to see the progress of the students and how much we needed that help when they came, to the United States. And I also see that a lot of other organizations, they focus about mentoring internal employees, but also we can help mentoring somebody else outside in their communities where we need that help the most.
excellent. So this organization actually reached out into the community
Mhm.
and helped mentor people, I guess, in navigating many things in the United States. And what else? Like what did mentoring entail when organization employees were mentoring in the community?
So it was at least was very rewarding experience. As I
Hmm?
said, I've learned myself. It was you got to know a lot of other people, and yes, you can see the difference. And yes, you may not see the difference after first week, after first month, but later on, seeing that all the people get their jobs, their dream jobs, they get to accepted to the schools they wanted to go, and some of them start mentoring others. It really feels rewarding because you can see that an impact of a program goes beyond the borders
Oh,
of that
okay.
program. Mhm.
Yeah, so this was a job creation effort, or it, even if that wasn't the purpose, it
Mhm.
helped people in the community get jobs,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
or to pursue educational pursuits, to train for jobs that they wanted, or the
Mhm.
kind of work they wanted to do in the world. That's fantastic. Yes, that is a reframe for mentoring. I worked in, as I've said many times, I've been in education for years, developed mentoring programs as well, oftentimes focused on first generation students, students who are Black and Latino. It might have been mentoring all of the students of color, right? So in the US, we have these major categories of Asian American, Pacific Islander, Desi, uh, Latino, Latinx,
Mhm.
uh, African American, Black students, Native American students, right, and Alaska Natives. And so I've developed many programs for those students over the years that I was in higher education. And it was always about like helping them navigate this new environment. And I would dare say the white students needed it too, right? Like all of our students needed it. Our international students needed it as well. In in the roles that I held, from residence life, admissions, I was the head of multicultural affairs, but I've always helped spearhead initiatives for any group
Mhm.
that was new to the environment, right? Like new to college in that
Mhm.
case. Uh, develop programs. I actually developed programs. It shifted after a while, but I shifted to actually using African principles that I learned, right, as the core, the center, the core of the mentoring process, right? Like what I learned from African culture. And listen, I don't even know still my roots, right? Like I don't know what part of Africa I descend from. However, I gained from being outside of that box,
Mm-hmm.
right? And uh, I studied mentoring, right? I studied retention programming and all of that. But I think what I brought to that experience more so was my personal experience of not knowing when I was a new college student, right? And so when we bring our experience, oftentimes, and I say our, I mean anyone, right? When we bring our personal experience of not having something and we try to fill that gap for others, it really can, it innovates. We literally change the world. And when it makes people feel welcome, feel that they're cared for, feel that they are important over tasks, over whatever limitation you want to point to, right? That
Mm-hmm.
they as a person are important. They will walk through walls for you, and you will also, in many cases, create long-standing relationships
Mm-hmm.
that you may not know that you need in your life. Would you agree?
100%.
Yes, I heard that.
100%. And
Yes.
yes, I think, many times people are thankful to me, but I thankful to them because I've learned, so much. Being many times people look for a mentor, somebody at a higher level,
Yeah.
somebody at managerial level. I would ask everybody to consider mentors from all kind walks and all kind backgrounds. The
Yes.
mentors I had came, like the homeless kids I worked with. I've learned so much from them.
Mm.
I worked, from high level executives, but I learned so much from a single mom who's trying
Yes.
to make meets in the United States, from, somebody senior than me and somebody junior than me. So I really would like people to see a person in front of them and see how much we can learn from that person themselves. And I think another thing is really important about belonging is not to be afraid to be vulnerable yourself.
Mm. Okay.
Because you cannot help others if you are afraid to share your own story and to be vulnerable yourself. And many times leaders expect everybody else sharing their stories, but they are not sharing themselves. And the change cannot happen if people don't show that example at the top leadership level.
Yes, that's so important. And I would say that same thing to educators in classrooms. You are the leader in your classroom, right? Uh, and I'm glad you said that because you made me think about a time when I was teaching first year students, right? And well, I was teaching first year students, teaching graduate students, but something stood out with those first year students, right? I would say among all of the students, they would be like the most vulnerable, right? They're new, they don't even know what they don't know, right? And that's the same thing with a new employee, anyone new to your environment, new volunteer, etc. And there was this one distinct time. It happened a lot, but I really noticed it one year when I had a groundswell. Like I had several, like almost half of my class were women that looked like me.
Mhm.
Yes. And they would follow me after class, like follow me out the door, you know. And I really was racking my brain, like what's happening right now? And I said, you know what? It's not about the content, right? It's about who I'm being. And
Mm,
so they taught me, right, to be yourself, be fully yourself, and be vulnerable as well. I was asking them to be vulnerable. We were talking about critical issues around uh, race, racism, sexism, our gender identities, our sexual orientations, religious backgrounds, a whole number of I guess you would, many people would
mm,
say taboo subjects, but really we were focused on social justice, right? And when I reflected, I realized that yes, it was in my vulnerability that they connected with me. That if I was not willing to do what I was asking them to do, they would never be able to do it. Not never, but at least not in my classroom, be able to do it as well. Right. And so
mm,
I have, ever since that time, pushed to be more vulnerable in different spaces, right? I'm Generation X, which is
mm,
this generation that still grew up in the United States, being told like certain things, like you don't tell your business, right? Like you don't bring the family business out in the street. Uh, but I share in my classroom because it's real, right? And
yeah,
this people are living real lives.
mm,
And there's something very sanitized about what I've seen in educational spaces and learning environments, in workplaces. It's so sanitized, almost like we don't bring ourselves to work. I remember saying at one point in my career, in the early years, I would say, well, I have my work self and I have my personal self, until I had an experience that helped me understand you have, Rochelle, everywhere you go. It
yes,
just looks different, right? The
mm,
results of those relationships that are built or not built are look different
mm,
because of the context that you're in, but you're your same self. So yes, if you're doing stuff at home that you might think other people don't know, or somebody, people in your life, in your personal life, help you understand something about yourself, trust and believe that it's happening at work as well. But it looks different. Yes.
yes, this is what you said is just so powerful, and I agree 100%. I worked only in one place where the CEO shared about her addiction to alcohol,
Hmm.
her issues with her father, but that conversation was so important and needed, and then suddenly everybody else starting sharing their stories. And was the time during COVID
Yes.
because everybody was struggling, and then suddenly everybody felt it's okay for them to tell that we are not okay. It was
Yes.
very helpful conversation, but many frequently, especially people at the leadership roles, including in HR, we think that we always have to be strong and positive and look good, and we cannot share anything that where maybe we're not so strong and where we felt like not okay, but that actually it helps open the conversations so much to others. Uh,
Yes.
um, Yes, I remember one time I had a contract, and when I was leaving the organization, and I shared a personal story why working with the students was so personal for me and what I've learned in that journey. And I thought, well, this is a little different, but let me send it because this is how I felt about the place, how much I've learned. And it was interesting that I had so many people stopping, and they said, I read this email, it was so powerful. And I thank you for doing that. And I guess I did something outside the box, sending very personal, not like, formal, letter. But it really resonated with so many people.
Yes. Yes. Sharing our stories. That's what I'm hearing, right? Sharing our stories,
Mhm,
not worrying about this looking good. It's fake.
Yes.
It's fake. No one's perfect. And unfortunately, today, right, we're seeing with access to social media, I'm hearing about so many, especially younger people, right, that are self-diagnosing that they have disorders that they might not really have, but they're listening to people on TikTok and, on X, on Instagram, Facebook, etc., right? And listening to people who are giving them a slice of information, but people are, what I'm hearing is that a number of young people are saying, hey, it is okay to say something's wrong with me, but then going really far into believing that they have a disorder when they don't, right? And that can be damaging as well. But I think about why they're anxious, or why, right? And they're anxious a lot of times because of trying to look good or trying to reach something that's called perfection. Yes. And it doesn't serve them. It doesn't serve them well. It doesn't serve us well. Right. So on the one hand, yes, it's a little more open than in, when I was growing up. We're being more open about mental health, but at the same time, we still have this underlying acceptance of this mentality that people have to be perfect. Yes. And so I keep thinking about I know that you speak about being imperfectly perfect, right? That's in the back of my head as I said the word perfect so many times. And I wonder if you can speak a little bit about that. You know, the benefit, right, of understanding our imperfection.
Yeah, so even this year was, as I said, this was a learning journey for me because you still remember, first time when I did podcast and I wanted to project confidence for other immigrants, and then suddenly I didn't look confident myself, and I felt very vulnerable sharing it of others because I thought if I'll share it, uh, something where I stumble over the words, I rush it, I don't look confident, nobody will ever hire me. But yes, what I didn't expect is that suddenly people will reach out and say, please continue this conversation, please be a voice for us. And I've realized, and they told me that how was refreshing for them to hear somebody who sounds like them. And then I thought about it, and they told me that we never have a consultant in organization who sounds like them, and these conversations are really important and needed. And yet at that time, I thought, yes, every time I go to the conference, frequently, I don't hear people who sound like me. And then I realized, yes, being, you don't need to be perfect to make a difference. And sometimes, maybe being who you are, not trying to impress anybody, just telling your own story can really help somebody else to consider opportunities maybe they will never consider. And being who you are, you really can connect with other people. And I say that, yes, I'm not a perfect speaker, no, I ever will be, but imperfect voices are really important and needed in the world where many people feel imperfect for different
Yeah.
reasons.
Well, you're a perfect communicator, a perfect connector. Yes. And when you say not a perfect speaker, I always want to keep inserting, you want to say not a perfect English speaker, right?
Well,
Um,
it's not even only about perfect English. It's like I don't even like, even in my own country, I would never consider speaking Korea because I sometimes stutter over the words, stumble. I don't have that confidence in front of the stage, and yes, now I became more confident. But yes, it's something that I never thought about it before,
Mm.
and then suddenly seeing, especially hearing from other people saying, yeah, I have, for example, disability, and you don't, but your language felt like disability, so please continue speaking. And I heard, one person told me, she had this disability of her voice cords, and for many years she was also stayed quiet, and then she said, yes, please continue speaking, because that's why your conversation is so important, because yes, there are like so many people who sound like so perfect, and then but many people are not like that.
Right.
People are not like that. Many of them don't have that confidence, and especially a lot of immigrants, yes, they feel that somebody else's voice is better, is more pronounced, is more clear, and that's why those stories are missing.
Yes, yes, those stories are missing. And so many people, organizations are missing out because we also connect, whether you stumble over words or you're not speaking perfect English or, speaking perfectly, if you will,
Mhm,
right? Grammatically correct, etc. That it somehow means you're less competent. And it's so not true,
mhm,
right? People who have been silent for years don't have as much practice speaking out and speaking up, either for themselves or other people. But it has nothing, it never did have anything to do with people's confidence, their competence, excuse me, right?
mhm,
Their ability to do their work or their ability to connect. In fact, many people who don't, who we would say don't speak perfectly,
mhm,
are the best connectors. We need each other. We need them. We need each other. We need us. I'll say the same thing. Some people say, oh, you speak well, you speak perfectly. No, I don't.
mhm, mhm,
you know, there's somebody who will, I would say, does it even better. No, I don't. And in fact, there was a time in my life where when I would hear people give me feedback
mhm,
after I spoke at a training, etc., they would say, "Oh, she's so professional." That actually broke my heart a little bit because I wanted to connect to real people, just to let them know that I'm just like you. you
mhm,
know, I'm just like you. And so I actually saw that as a barrier to be seen as so, well spoken and professional, if you will.
mhm,
And decided from that time on that I'm just going to speak plain so that anybody can benefit, anybody who I'm supposed to reach
mhm,
hears the words, right? And I'm working on purpose. My goal with this podcast, with the work that I do, I've always seen as a part of my purpose, like the reason why I was created. It's
mhm,
not always what we think in my mind, right? Because I lean to a higher being that created me. And I say that I don't do it on my own will, but this is what I think I'm supposed to be doing.
mhm,
I don't know if you have anything to say about that as well, but yeah, I think that a lot of us who would be called, great speakers, well spoken, we have a ways to go as well.
mhm,
And we need to think about that when we're talking to people who are non-native English speakers or non-native speakers of the language of the country that they are living and working in.
I just love everything you told. I just loved everything you told. And yes, it's so much wisdom and so many great thoughts. And yes, sometimes, like even for me, I had this conversation of my mentor when people start reaching out to me, and I said, how can I be a voice for others when suddenly I don't even like to see myself on the camera, and I don't even want to do podcasts. I don't want, to do any recordings. And then he told me, Solveiga, if not you, who will? And then think about all the people who rely on you today.
Yes.
And yes, that was like in a time that I realized, yes, I am not, there are other people who feel even less comfortable, whose English is even worse than mine. And I thought, yes, this conversation is important. And maybe, yes, I'm a perfect representative for other people who feel also that their voice is imperfect, or they don't look as good, or they maybe don't feel comfortable in front of a camera for any reasons. And yes, suddenly, initially I also thought that my message will relate only to immigrants, but then seeing that people from all kind of backgrounds relate, because yes, I talk about be feeling imperfect, what it's like feeling invisible, what it's like to not to belong, what it's like having dreams that are far away. And then yes, suddenly people from all kind of backgrounds relate to it,
Mm-hmm.
and see that this conversation is important. And yes, they don't seem care about my speaking skills, my comfort level, my English. Yes, sometimes I think we can be also our worst enemies in judging ourselves.
Yes. Yes, we can. This has been a powerful conversation as always with you. Would there be any like parting advice you would want to share with our audience? Or any resources that you would like to share with them as well?
Mhm. Well, I would suggest for everybody just to be bold, be yourself, and don't compare yourself to others, but compare your progress of a previous day, previous year, and feel, proud how much you achieved.
Yes.
And of course, you always can improve, but be kind to yourself and saying, yes, I'm going to try to do something really challenging and difficult, and I'm not going to regret about it. And yes, talking about resources, there are a few books that really helped me this year. One of them was from Clarissa Pinkola Estes. It's called Women Running with Wolves. And I think this book is powerful book to read, not only for women, but for everybody else. It looks at the fairy tales and myths from different countries around the world.
Mm,
And it made me to look, to learn some fairy tales that I never knew about it, to learn about other cultures. But also it made me to look at some fairy tales that I knew for many years in different eyes, like Ugly Duckling, or the Girl of the Matches. And what the character, like what the author teaches, is really not to be afraid to listen your own instincts, and listen what your dreams are, and following your dreams no matter what other people think.
yes.
And there's a quote, like really one of them like resonated, that if you afraid to go to the forest and you don't go, nothing will ever happens to you. But you'll not live a life, you will live a life. Something in those lines, that we have to be able to face our worst fears, and to try to not to be afraid yet to fail. This is where the learning starts. And the second book is Megan Norton's Belonging Beyond the Borders, where she shared her story as expatriate growing up and moving to different countries. And her experience, it truly resonated to me. And this is where like I thought belonging is such an important topic from so many people from so many different backgrounds.
Yes.
So this is a few books I wanted to mention.
Okay, thank you so much. I really want to thank you for being so generous with your time, your expertise. And I want to know if there is a way that people can find you after this episode, how they can find you, contact you. Please share.
Yeah, so I think for now, like LinkedIn is the best resources. I'm still like working on my website, but
Mhm.
it seems like a lot of opportunities came because people notice what I'm writing or I'm talking about it, and so it's working for now.
Wonderful. Okay, so through LinkedIn, Solveiga
Jaskunas.
Jaskunas. Yes. I actually like to get the pronunciation of people's names correct.
Mhm,
I see it as a valuable thing. So I apologize. I
mhm,
am stumbling, but I want to stumble into saying it the way that it's pronounced. Seriously, I
mhm,
don't I feel like people just kind of skip over people's names if it's hard. And I'm like, that naming is so important in
mhm,
so many cultures, all of our cultures, right? What we name the child, it's like so connected to family, to ways of being, ways of knowing.
mhm.
And people skip over how it's pronounced, and I'm not okay with that. So I will stumble until I get it right. Jaskunas.
Yes, that's perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. So please find Solveiga on LinkedIn. That's the best way to find this phenomenal woman. And thank you to everyone who stopped by. Please leave a comment and share this episode. And thank you again for listening to Rooted to Thrive.